I am again on the floor on a different part of my bookshelf. I guess these are my short story collections that I've read. These are series that I have yet to finish, but I know that I really like them so far. So Limbo, I guess. And this is just a section of like Gen Pop books that I've read, just like a general thing, but these are the highlighted ones. Hello, if you've been here before, welcome back. If not, hi, my name is David. I make videos talking about media that I want to talk about. This is another book tag. This is the Brontë Novel book tag. I was tagged by Jackie over at Reading Wordsmith. Hello, thank you so much for tagging me. And this was created by Melinda at A Web of Stories. I'll have both of their channels in the description below. And this is 7 prompts based off of the Brontë novels. Now, I will say I'm not familiar with any of the Brontë sisters, I believe, but I looked at these prompts and they really made me think. And I really like book tag prompts that make me think about books in terms of somewhat difficult prompts that I have to start like, okay, what books have I read that I haven't talked about that can fit to this and stuff like that. And so I haven't read any of these books, the Brontë books, but if you think that I would enjoy some of them, please let me know, and I'll likely add them to my list. So the first prompt is Agnes Grey. It is a book about women in the workforce. And so for that, I chose Blood Over Brighthaven by M.L. Wang. I recently read this. It's one of the best books I've read this year. And it's about a woman who has studied her entire life to become the first woman to be elevated into a position of high mage, because in this fantasy world, it's all men. It's very patriarchal society. And so she works hard to get to that position. And then the book starts with her taking the test and passing with flying colors and beginning that work. And, this story, it dives a little bit further from just like being the first woman in the workforce, and does a lot more than just that. But definitely this is the one book I was like, oh yeah, this is perfect for this prompt, because I also loved reading this book. The next prompt is Jane Eyre, a coming-of-age novel centered on a female character. There's a lot of good options for this. Specifically, I would say like Hunger Games, The Book Thief, but one that I will always keep returning to is His Dark Materials by Philip Pullman. Lyra Silvertongue in this series is an amazing protagonist, and we see her growth, and in the TV adaptation as well. It's an amazing adaptation, and I just adore this novel, and the 3 novels, this contains all 3 novels in one. I adore how Lyra is written and how she grows, and I think she's a great protagonist in a YA novel. The next prompt is The Professor, a book by a favorite author that is not your favorite. And so for that, I like to say that I have some favorite authors just because I read like 1 or 2 books of them. But definitely one author that I have read multiple of is David Mitchell. My least favorite book is Slade House. Now, I think it's still a pretty good story. Slade House is about the Slade House, which is the center of mysterious disappearances that occur every few years. It happens, I think it was 9 years. Every 9 years, someone disappears. And it goes through all of those 9 years, starting in the 1800s, I want to say, 1979, and goes up until the present for this book. When was this published? This book was published in 2015, and it goes up until 2015. And then David Mitchell loves writing books that start in the past, go into the present, and then get into the future. And I believe this book goes until it actually stops at 2015. So I'm wrong about that. Anyways, Slade House, mysterious disappearances happen every 9 years. And what this book does really well is each of those characters that disappear in each of those 9 years are really, really well written. And so it really feels bad whenever they do disappear and when bad things happen to them. And it's not satisfying in terms of, I don't want them to be hurt. I don't want them to be killed this way, because when they disappear, they're getting killed, obviously. Um, and I just, that's a little too cruel for me. And then the comeuppance of the two perpetrators of these disappearances is good, but also like at this point, a lot of really interesting, really sympathetic characters are hurt, and I feel like that was too cruel of a story to tell. I do believe it is also, this is a not prequel, not a sequel, like a branch off of the type of character. They're like they're like immortal vampires that feed on the essence of people. That's what's happening to the people. And a better story that talks about this type of being is the Bone Clocks, which I read prior. And so I would say Slade House is my least favorite of his novels. It's still pretty good. I just don't quite like the pain and suffering that some of them go through. Prompt for Shirley, a book about female friendship. And so I had a handful of options here, and I wanted to highlight three of them, but I wanted to talk on length about one. But the first one I want to talk about is Queen's Shadow by E.K. Johnson. It's the Padme series trilogy. I've talked about this before. The 6 handmaidens that Padme hires and works with and befriends. Really great found family trope here. I've talked a lot about Padme, so I didn't want to focus too much on that one. The other one I had is The Kiss of Deception. This is a book I really want to reread sometime soon because I remember loving it. And it's about this princess who knows that she's going to be married off to this random prince of a different nation, and she doesn't want to do that, so she runs away with her best friend, and things happen. And the focus here, to me, the focus is not the friendship of these two girls, but like this is one book that I wanted to talk about that I haven't talked about in a while. I do want to reread it because I've read the entire series, but I barely remember what happens in it. But I do remember this had some great writing techniques that I wanted to revisit. So that's one female friendship book that I could talk about. However, the one I really wanted to focus on is The Girls of Good Fortune by Christina McMorris. I read this pretty recently, and it is a historical fiction about a woman who grows up in Oregon in 1888, and she's half Chinese, but she's white passing, and she's dealing with racial issues, and she has a daughter. And the big focus of this is she ends up living inside a brothel. In Portland, this brothel, she makes a lot of friends with the prostitutes there, and they help raise her daughter. They help get her to a better position in life, help her survive until the father of her daughter comes back from overseas. What was he doing? He's not in the war. There's no war at this time. Studying. He was studying. And so she has to survive just long enough by her own self and her daughter until he gets home. And her friendship with these prostitutes really helps her do that. And so it's a really great showcase of female friendship in this book. I wanted to note as well, these prompts are very women forward, and love that. I wouldn't say that I have not read that many, but definitely some of these prompts gave me a little bit issue trying to find something. So if you know of any other books that you enjoy that centered on female friendship, or any other prompts that come later, because the latter prompts were a little difficult for me, let me know and I will add those to my list, because I always want to read more stories of different perspectives and stuff like that. And so case in point, the next prompt is The Tenant of Wildfell Hall, which is a book about someone in a toxic relationship or recovering from a toxic relationship. And so I tend to not gravitate towards those types of books because I don't really want to consume that type of story. However, it's very important for others to have that story. And so if you know of any book that talks about this issue that you think is pretty well written, let me know and I might add it. I know Jackie, she mentioned I'm Glad My Mom Died, which I also read, by Jeanette McCurdy. This was an amazingly written book. I could only read it. I had to read it within 2 days. If I could have read it in one day, I would have, but I could not read this book longer than 2 days because it was just heavy and hard to get through, in terms of the things that happened to her. And I, don't want to linger in that, but it's definitely important for these stories to be told. Jackie mentioned this book. So it was hard for me to try to find a book that I've read prior that I can talk about that it talks about a toxic relationship. We're recovering from a toxic relationship. And one that really struck me that I was like, oh my God, yes, I haven't talked about this yet also well, is In the Dream House, Carmen Maria Machado. Carmen Maria Machado is an amazing author. I have her, Body Another Party somewhere up here. It's over here. Her Body and Other Parties short story collection, amazing. I've also read a handful of them outside of her. They're all going to be up in here, short story collections. Anyways, this is her memoir. And memoirs, I tend to... Actually, I was going to say I tend to stay away from memoirs, but I think most of only nonfiction stories I've read have been memoirs. But this is a memoir that's written in a very specific way, a very special way. I want to highlight every chapter, it says the dream house as something, and it's a different concept, it's a different time. So this one is as dirty laundry or as five lights, dream house as pop single, and it's just like something that she's talking about, a concept or like a moment in her past or something like that. There's one that I really liked that was, I forget what it was called, but it was like something like a choose your own story. And it's just a really poignant way to write this type of memoir. And so it's about Carmen Maria Machado recovering from an abusive relationship that she had with a former lover. And she was sort of talking about how these types of abusive relationships, and because they think that queer relationships can't be like this, you're sort of like stigmatized to not talk about abusive relationships from queer relationships. And she's trying to bring that stigma down and talk about it. Like, hey, I was in a lesbian relationship that was toxic and abusive, very abusive. So she's working through these emotions and her relationship like that. I found the one that I was talking about, Dream House as choose your own adventure, and it says like, if you do this, go to page whatever. If you do that, go to page that. And like, it spans for like 10 pages maybe. And there's one page in the very center that's like, you shouldn't be on this page. And maybe this is just a cycle. Maybe you have to break the cycle, but to break the cycle, you have to break the rules, etc. That made me cry. In the Dream House, amazing memoir about toxic relationships. And so I wanted to talk about it. I haven't been able to talk about it. But yeah, if you know of any other stories that deal with that, if that are good, that are hopeful, I would love to hear what you think. As much as I loved it, as much as how good I'm glad your mom died, I do not want to read another story like that. Now we get to a little something lighter. Pomp 6, Vilette, a book about a character in a new land. I have two options here. I wanted to highlight both of these because both were really good recent reads of this year. First one is The Court Dancer by Kyung Suk Shin, translated by Anton Her. And this is about a Korean court dancer in the 1880s. And she meets and falls in love with a French diplomat. And he takes her back to France. And so part of this book is her living in France and learning how to be in this foreign country, her being a expat, an immigrant, and her struggles with that, and her joys and fears, and learning about colonialism and learning about history and how bad things happen at times. And she has to like change her romantic view of the world just by going to Paris. Was a really poignant story, and I absolutely adored The Court Dancer. This is the third Kyung Suk Shin book that I've read, and the first one I read, Please Look After Mom, is also amazing. The second one was fine. This third one was just amazing. The other book that I wanted to highlight for a character in a new land is 6 Days in Bombay by Alka Joshi. This book I got from Book of the Month, and it's about a nurse who she is over the course of 6 days learning about the life and not tragedy but like hardship of a famous painter that she befriends who is sick in her hospital. And the famous painter, she is telling her about her life and the people she's met and the people she's hurt. And when she passes away after those 6 days in Bombay, she tells, or before she passes away, she tells the young nurse to travel and to go to the other people, to others that she herself has, the painter has hurt, have affected, and to give them paintings that she had done. And so that the nurse is able to travel to different European countries and give paintings and travel and look and learn. And it was just a beautiful story about this nurse who she thought that she didn't really have much, she could do much in her little world. This is set in the like 1930s, 1937. This is right before World War II. And so it's a great literary novel that I absolutely adored. Finally, last prompt, Wuthering Heights. I definitely know what that is. It's a book where a house or other building plays a major role. Now, there's, I feel like this was such an easy one that I had to like focus and be like, okay, what have I not talked about? I've already talked a lot about House of Leaves. House of Leaves, the house on Ash Tree Lane, is one of the most iconic houses ever. So I wanted to mention it, but I've already talked about it a lot. Another book that I'm like, oh, this is so easy. Babel, R.F. Kuang. The Babel, the Tower of Babel is iconic, and it's an easy like. This is a what is the prompt? Plays a major role in the story, the Tower of Babel, obviously. So I had to try to find a book that I haven't talked about recently that has something like that. And I was like, oh, I have not talked about 13 Stories by Jonathan Sims. Okay, Jonathan Sims is the writer of my favorite drama podcast, horror podcast, The Magnus Archives and The Magnus Protocol. And this is his second or first published novel. And it's about 13 people who live in this apartment block who begin having hauntings happen to them, like strange, horrifying things happen to them. And I thought it was fine. I thought it was fine. There's a lot, like, Jonathan Sims has a very strong fan base. I am one of those. And I think it's important to be able to say, like, hey, sometimes a piece of work is not my favorite of this one favorite author, right? This would also go into the prompt of, like, a favorite author's my least favorite book of a favorite author. This is the only book I've read of his, but I've definitely more than once listened through. I've listened to more Magnus Archives like 3 times by now, and this is not connected to the Magnus Archives at all. And it's about, like I said, 13 people who live in this apartment complex. The apartment complex itself is haunted, and it's also a heavy critique on capitalism, a heavy critique on greed, and I feel like it is a little heavy-handed with it as well. And as we go through all 13 stories, the stories of each of these inhabitants, you sort of have this fatigue as you keep going. I had fatigue as we kept going. I was like, when is this going to finish? Because they're not connected in terms of the things that one happened to the other. They're not connected like that, but they're all living within the same apartment complex. So it's like, okay, why is this happening to them in this apartment complex? And the final story, or the answer as to what is happening, is satisfying, but it was a definite slog to get to that point, unfortunately. But I did want to talk about 13 Stories because Jonathan Sims is an amazing writer. And yeah, that is all of the prompts for the Brontë book tag. Thank you again to Jackie for tagging me, and thank you to Melinda at A Web of Stories for making this prompt. I really liked the prompt questions. Made me really analyze, and I had to stop and think, like, okay, go with the one that you haven't talked about that fits well. And yeah, I had a lot of fun doing this prompt. And if you think of any books that could fit any of those prompts, or any of the actual Brontë novels that you think I would like, please let me know. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Share with your friends. Let me know what you think. Don't forget to be passionate. And I'll see you later.